December 23, 1944. A German observer pressed field glasses against his eyes on Senap's Hill, Belgium. Through the lens, something impossible emerged. The sky filled with aircraft, so many that they blotted out the winter sun. In that moment, a hardened Wehrmacht soldier understood a terrible truth. His empire was fighting not an army, but an industrial civilization itself. This is the story of how 241 planes saved an entire division and shattered the last illusions of Nazi victory. The Ardennes offensive had begun with supreme German confidence 7 days earlier. On December 16 at 5:30 a.m., 1,600 German artillery pieces unleashed a devastating 90-minute barrage across a 130-kilometer front. Operation Watch on the Rhine, Hitler's last desperate gamble, aimed to split the Allied armies and recapture Antwerp. For the first time since Normandy, German forces moved in daylight without fear of Allied fighter bombers. The weather was their greatest ally. Low clouds, freezing fog, and snow had grounded the feared American Air Force. General Heinz Kokot's 26th Volksgrenadier Division advanced with particular determination. These were veterans, rebuilt after being destroyed on the Eastern Front, equipped with anti-tank guns and tracked destroyers. The Germans were ready for armor, ready for counterattacks, ready for anything except what they would actually encounter. American forces weren't retreating in disorder. They were falling back methodically, destroying bridges and establishing roadblocks. The 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagles, arrived in Bastogne mere hours before German forces. They were exhausted, under-equipped for winter, yet they arrived in time. That would make all the difference. By December 20th, German forces had successfully surrounded Bastogne. All 7 highways were cut, trapping approximately 22,000 American soldiers, outnumbered 5-1, lacking cold weather gear, ammunition, food, medical supplies, and senior leadership. For the Germans, it appeared to be Stalingrad in reverse, a surrounded enemy force destined to surrender or perish. General Lutwitz, commanding the 47th Panzer Corps, was supremely confident. The Americans had perhaps 3 days of ammunition and 4 days of food if rationed carefully. Harsh winter temperatures dropping to -10 degrees Celsius would do half the work. The confidence was so high that German tank divisions continued toward Antwerp on December 22nd, leaving only 1 regiment to assist the 26th Volksgrenadier Division. Why waste tanks on a town that would fall from starvation and cold? Bastogne was merely an annoying obstacle that would resolve itself. On December 22nd, certain of imminent victory, the Germans sent their surrender ultimatum. 4 German soldiers approached American lines carrying the message typed in both English and German. The fortune of war is changing. USA forces in and near Bastogne have been encircled. Demand honorable surrender within 2 hours, threatening total annihilation if refused. When the American response came back, it was a single word: nuts. The response shocked German command. General Kokot was reportedly stunned. No surrounded force had ever responded so dismissively to a surrender demand. In post-war interrogations, he would reveal, "We offered honorable terms. We had them surrounded 5-1. No supplies could reach them. To refuse seemed not brave, but insane." Then, December 23rd, 1944 dawned with something the Germans hadn't seen in a week: clear skies. German soldiers emerged from frozen foxholes, grateful for sunshine that might warm their numb limbs. Then they heard it, a distant drone that grew steadily louder, echoing off the hills surrounding Bastogne. At 11:50 a.m., the sky became filled with aircraft. 241 C-47 transport planes flying in perfect formation at barely 1,000 feet altitude. They came in waves, each group releasing cargo in sequence. The sky filled with parachutes of different colors: red for ammunition, blue for medical supplies, yellow for food, white for miscellaneous equipment. The sight was overwhelming. For American defenders, it was salvation. For German observers, it was the beginning of understanding their catastrophic miscalculation. German anti-aircraft crews scrambled desperately. 88mm flak guns swiveled skyward. 20mm automatic cannons began their rapid chatter. Machine guns added their voices to the crescendo. Black puffs of exploding shells filled the sky. American planes flew straight through the barrage, maintaining formation with almost suicidal determination. 14 C-47s were lost, shot down or so badly damaged they crashed. But for every plane that fell, 15 more continued on course, doors open, bundles tumbling into the December sky. German soldiers watched in disbelief as damaged aircraft, engines smoking and wings torn by flak, maintained course long enough to drop their supplies before banking away or crashing. What followed was a masterclass in American logistics that shattered German morale more effectively than any artillery barrage. The colored parachutes descended like a multicolored snowstorm, thousands upon thousands drifting down onto the snow-covered fields. By day's end, one battalion alone had received 528 K rations and 250 gallons of gasoline. Ammunition supplies included 286 high-explosive shells, 177 white phosphorus, and 201 anti-tank rounds, and this was just one battalion. Throughout December 23rd, additional missions arrived. At 2 p.m., another wave appeared, including gliders towed by C-47s carrying heavier supplies. These gliders brought complete surgical units, jeeps, communications equipment, and even replacement artillery pieces. One glider carried nothing but whole blood for transfusions, a medical luxury the German army couldn't provide even to its highest-ranking officers. German medical officers, watching through binoculars, were stunned while they treated wounded with paper bandages and sawdust, operating without anesthesia. The Americans were flying in refrigerated blood, penicillin, and surgical teams. The gap in capability alone was demoralization enough. The clear weather brought something even worse than the transport armada. American air superiority returned in its most terrifying form. P-47 Thunderbolts came in low and fast. 50 caliber machine guns blazing, rockets screaming from under their wings. They hunted everything that moved: supply trucks, horse-drawn artillery, individual vehicles, small groups of soldiers. Every road became a death trap. German forces that had moved freely for a week were suddenly paralyzed. After a week of feeling like they were winning, German soldiers were abruptly reminded of what they faced in Normandy: an enemy with material superiority so overwhelming they could afford to hunt individual vehicles with aircraft. By nightfall on December 23rd, the psychological transformation among German besiegers was complete. They had witnessed not just a supply drop, but a demonstration of overwhelming industrial and logistical superiority that defied comprehension. The mathematics were undeniable and depressing. If America could risk hundreds of aircraft to supply one division, what reserves did they have? If they could deliver hundreds of tons of supplies in perfect coordination on a few hours' notice, what was their true industrial capacity? General Hasso von Manteuffel, commanding the 5th Panzer Army, would later reflect, the Americans had solved modern warfare's fundamental problem: logistics. They could supply encircled forces by air more efficiently than Germany could supply advancing forces by road. General Kokott, described as a shy, scholarly commander, provided perhaps the most succinct assessment. When those transport planes filled the sky on December 23rd, every German soldier understood that they were not fighting just an army. They were fighting an entire industrial civilization, and they were armed with rifles and horses. The siege was lifted on December 26th when General George S. Patton's 4th Armored Division broke through the German encirclement from the south. The defenders were exhausted but unbroken, supplied by air, confident in victory. The numbers tell the story starkly. 1,207 tons of supplies and equipment were dropped by parachute to the 101st Airborne, plus 92.4 tons landed by glider. This included 4,900 gallons of gasoline, 15,000 artillery shells, nearly 8,000 gallons of gasoline, food for 15,000 men, and winter clothing for the garrison. German aircraft sorties over Bastogne, less than 100. American aircraft sorties, over 2,000. The 101st Airborne never surrendered because they didn't need to. Their nation could supply them through the very air itself, turning the ancient art of siege warfare into an obsolete relic. The German soldiers who witnessed those 241 C-47s understood not just the relief of Bastogne, but the future of warfare itself. A future that belonged to the nation that could fill the sky with aircraft as easily as Germany could fill a field with soldiers. The war continued for another 5 months, but for those who witnessed the sky over Bastogne fill with American planes, it had already ended on that clear December morning when they realized the 101st would never surrender, not because they were braver soldiers, but because their nation would never let them fail. The planes over Bastogne didn't just supply the 101st Airborne. They shattered the last illusions of German victory and wrote in the sky the final truth of World War II. America's arsenal was vast, its resolve unbreakable, and its victory certain. The German soldiers who witnessed that aerial armada knew with absolute certainty what their leaders would deny for 4 more months. The war was over. America had won it.